Welcome to the podcast. We do recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
All right. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful 28th day of May. You're listening to We Do Recover. I'm your host of this thing, Jared Miller. I'm going to introduce the rest of the lineup. Some of them are some familiar names. We have our producer, Sean Donovan.
That's me.
Love Sean. We also have your co-host, our medical expert.
We're sending him overseas. We're going to
export him.
Expat.
Our medical guy we're going to send overseas.
Dr. Terry Sellers.
What's up, everybody?
And we have a featured guest for you today, my buddy, my man, Drew Wilson.
What up?
How are you this morning?
Doing good, man.
Good.
Still, I'm not a morning person. Still waking
Drew,
up
sounds like
at
you need
10 a.m.
Need some caffeine, it sounds like.
Well, you're a doctor. What can you prescribe me?
Dr. Pepper.
You see what he did there?
Dr. Pepper.
All right, well, let's get into some new and goods, man. We took a week off. I went fishing, Strawberry. It was beautiful. That's my new and good. Oh, also, I just barely got under contract for a house. That's also a new and good.
Sweet.
And the best new and good of all is July 14th is getting closer, the day I get to marry Mandy. So she hasn't bailed yet.
Whoa.
The
right?
day she gets to marry you.
I appreciate that, Drew.
She has to marry him.
Oh, that's true. I was being nice.
Yeah. Don't.
So that's my new and good.
Those are new and goods.
Yeah.
I like those a lot.
What's new and good with you, Doc?
Did you catch anything?
I did. Yeah. I caught a beautiful rainbow trout. Yep.
Did you bring it home or did you release it?
No, I released it.
Dang
I released it.
Love eating fish.
Yeah.
How big?
It's like 22 inches. 21.
27 feet?
What?
What? The largest
You've
trout
seen Jaws,
ever?
right? It was basically an episode of Jaws.
It was a
Did you need
rainbow.
bigger boat?
It was a rainbow great white shark.
Yes. That's exactly what it was.
All right. Well, did you ask me my new and good? I didn't catch that.
I did indeed.
I don't know what my new and good
Indeed,
is. That's
sir.
the problem. So I changed up my schedule a little bit. You guys, some of you know. Well, you know, Jared, but nobody else may know. But I usually work in Richfield on Thursdays and then drive straight here from Richfield. And because of some conflicts, I had to change my Richfield day to Wednesday. So I drive straight here from Orem now instead of from Richfield. So it's a much longer drive. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's probably nice to stop halfway through, right, and get out. Stretch the
Are you
legs.
really driving with that Tesla that you have? I mean, you're just sitting back, sleeping in the back seat.
Well,
Let the car drive it,
I
right?
call that driving.
Angry Birds.
He had to get that because he had 3 prior accidents within the same year that totaled each one of his cars. So.
When I say driving, I mean sleeping, but it's okay.
Thank God for technology.
No, I don't drive a Tesla. I drive something else, and it doesn't drive itself. Dang it.
Dang it.
And they don't teach you to fold your collar down and
Oh, thank you, man.
He's got you taken
Barely
care
got my
of.
caffeine in.
Sean Donovan, rein us in here, man. What's new and good going on in your world?
Everything's fine.
Oh, that was
So
the
inspiring.
most. That was the most
The
enthusiastic
hottest
answer I've
podcast
ever
on
heard.
radio, thanks to Sean
Informative.
Donovan.
Everything's fine.
Bike was broken. Motorcycle was broken.
What? That's your new and good every single week.
I know, but it's like 90% fixed again.
I think we need to
I
start
got
a new
one more oil
fundraiser.
change.
I think we need to start a new fundraiser, and it's going to be fund
Just get
Sean
him-
Donovan's
get him a
motorcycle.
bike.
Let's get a GoFundMe.
Let's get him a
going.
bike that'll last longer than 4 minutes.
Well, hey, my bike,
7 minutes.
it's always falling apart, but it always makes it. I have never broken down permanently or had to be towed home anywhere. I'm just saying. Of all the things that have happened.
Nice.
And you just jinxed it.
Yeah,
that's
there with that.
By the way, I'm going to Texas. So wish me luck. I may be calling you to haul me home.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck, my friend. You know my number. Drew Wilson, what's new and good? What's going on in your world? Man, I saw an engagement picture in November.
Yeah.
What did she say yes?
No, he just printed the picture, but she said no.
To everyone's shock and surprise, yes, she said yes.
So who are you engaged to?
So her name's Linda Bestion. I mean,
Don't
yeah,
tell me,
she-
tell the mic.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't do this every week, Jared. I'm trying to look at you, man.
You're good, brother.
Yeah, so her name's Linda. She's also in recovery. I don't think she'll mind me telling you that.
Nice.
Neither of us really try to, hide that part of our lives. It's just kind of part of who we are now, and we try to just share with everyone, kind of, help break that stigma. So
I love that.
I got a bunch of friends that do still hide it.
Yeah.
None of them come on this podcast.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
If you're on the
Weird.
podcast, you're not hiding much.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, cool. Doc, where do you want to go with Drew?
I don't know. Sideways.
Sideways.
Let's go sideways.
throw him a curveball.
Drew,
Tell me.
what's your favorite trophy that you have from your childhood?
Well, turns out I wasn't an awesome athlete as a child.
Oh man.
So
I did not mean to do
mostly
this.
I had participation trophies,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when I was, can we go early 20s?
Oh, you can go anytime you want.
I got a hole in one playing golf in my early 20s, and my dad got me a trophy with the ball. However,
Like the actual ball that you hit a hole in one
the
with.
ball, yeah.
Wow.
However, in my addiction, long story short, it was lost to
Disappeared itself.
Father Time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to be honest with you. That's a heck of a trophy. I don't have one of those, and I've played a lot of golf in my day.
Yeah. Now Sellers is going to go around to all the pawn shops in Orem looking for that trophy to
Yeah.
buy.
I'm gonna find that trophy for you for sure, or make you another one, whatever.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whatever.
Hey, that was just a curveball. Sorry. Kind of cool though that you have a hole in one.
Yeah.
Not everybody I know can say that,
Yeah.
including
It was
me.
exciting.
including me. And I've played a bunch of golf, just never quite had one go.
You
in
know
the
what
hole.
I think? I think that hole in ones skip a generation. My grandpa had one. My dad hasn't. I had one. And
Nope.
then I heard another story like that.
I don't have anybody in my family that's ever had one.
Well,
They skip a whole family in my case.
Yeah.
Speaking of skipping, you know what I skipped?
What?
Episode 40, part 1 is brought to you by Steps Recovery Centers.
Oh my gosh.
Where addiction ends and healing begins.
Wonder where Drew Wilson works.
Drew, do you know anything about Steps?
I'm fairly familiar with it.
Have you heard of
yeah.
him? Ever heard of him at all?
Let's get their swag on. So listen, seriously, in all seriousness, if you or a loved one need help, give them a call. 801-800-8142. Drew, should we start there? I mean, let's shift from golf to
No, don't shift from golf.
okay. Well,
Stay with golf. I'm in charge of this episode. You sit over there. And be
tell us
quiet.
about how much you love
I'm kidding.
golfing while working at Steps Recovery. There you go. There you go. Intertwined it.
Well, it turns out they go hand in hand. Although I just had surgery a couple weeks ago, and I can't play golf for probably another 3-4 weeks.
Oh shoot!
So
There's a
it's
tournament
been
next
rough.
week.
Yeah. So, yeah, I won't be at Mr. Lemma's tournament.
Dang it!
And
I will.
can't play sober softball, none of that. So it's been kind of rough.
You ever play good time golf?
Oh,
You
yeah.
ever play with those guys?
I played up at Mountaindale a few weeks ago.
So they're having a tournament on.
Yeah. There's
Nice.
a couple tournaments going
Yeah.
on. I think Renaissance Ranch is having one tomorrow.
Are they?
Yeah.
I don't think.
Just like a little 9-hole.
I don't think
alumni.
Renaissance Ranch invites me to much.
Oh, I was surprised they invited me.
Okay, let's actually let's have an episode. now,
Okay,
shall we?
Let's get it.
We want to get back on track.
My OCD, you guys are killing me right now.
That's my goal, is to kill your OCD. You know that.
Should we? You want to shift gears to my experience with steps? Is that what you're wanting to do?
Just tell us.
Well,
Tell
what
us
do
about
you,
your
yeah,
life.
tell us right now. What are you doing for Steps? What do you tell us what that role is? Tell us.
So I'm the director of business development at Steps. Long story short, I went to Steps about 10 years ago.
So you were a client there.
I was a client first. Did well for a while. Turns out I didn't work very hard in treatment. Like, you're supposed to feel uncomfortable in treatment, it turns out. Like, if you're not, you're doing it wrong.
You did well.
Yeah, and all I did was flirt with girls and, had a good time and thought at the end, well, that was easy. I'm super good at rehab, and
So I'll do it again.
Thought that was enough, and later on, I was able to use a lot of the tools that I learned in Steps, but I didn't apply them in my life until I was in prison. Unfortunately, I ended up going to prison for 3.5 years, and due to just obviously from stuff from my addiction. And
Right.
But I want to stop and point out one thing. He did say some seeds were planted, and we've talked about that on previous episodes,
Right.
yeah,
right? Okay, go ahead. So hold on. They planted the seeds. You decided to continue to pile manure on top of that seed, right? So
It'll grow eventually.
yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
I like it.
Sorry. Okay, back to you.
I like your
that's
analogy.
a good analogy.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of good stuff. It was getting in there,
Right.
I just wasn't ready to apply it yet, and thought I was smarter than it, better than it, than the disease, and ended up having a relapse, went to prison 3.5 years. And when I got out of prison, I paroled to Steps Sober Living House in Orem. And that's where I met people like
Where was Steps Sober Living House at the time? 8th North?
Sandhill House. Sandhill Road by Walmart there in Orem.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I paroled there. I met people like Julie Jackson, who you guys had on last month or whenever that was. And, Tyler Hansen and Paul Walkenhorst, our owners, I met them. And they made me the house manager a few months later.
Shout out to those guys. Love those guys.
Yeah. And when I first got out of prison, I was working for Christian Smith, our pal Christian Smith, at his old place Inspire, and he gave me my first job in recovery out of prison, and really gave me a chance. And and as you know, that place later became Renaissance Ranch, and and so I went over to Steps to be. They asked me to be a case manager at their outpatient treatment in Orem, and did that for about 6 months, and then they plugged me into marketing, and they said, "Hey, Drew, you're a marketer now." And I had no idea what to do, no idea what that meant, and just kind of went for it. One thing I will say about my prison experience is I didn't really take things seriously the first year. I was still kind of screwing around in prison, but eventually I got serious, and I really focused on coming out a better person, a better man, more prepared for life. And so when I got out and Christian gave me that job, I was really able to just hit the ground running, and so I moved up quickly. All of a sudden I'm a marketing director. I was the programming director at our Draper outpatient. Sorry, I wasn't marketing director. I was in marketing. And I did really well. Turns out I was pretty good at it. I've always struggled with finding my strengths and my talents. I always assumed that talents meant you can sing good, you're good at sports, and I never really thought of the ability to connect with people, the ability to empathize with people as talents, the ability to, be funny and charming and inject it into the right situations is as a talent. And those are things that are my talents, and I've been able to really utilize them. And it turns out like I just love it. I love connecting with people. My favorite part of the job is that first meeting when they're so hopeless, and you get to give them hope, whether it's them or it's their mom or dad, and you get to provide that hope for them. And, we've talked about different things on our team, the business development marketing team, like, should we separate marketing and admissions? Should we do this? Should we do that? But one thing, the conclusion we came to is we don't want to lose that connection. I didn't want to lose that part of it where I wasn't involved with the family and the client, and seeing them all the way through their process. And it takes a little more time and a little more emotional energy, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, that's a talent, right? Communication, connection, like those things are definitely talents that not everybody has.
And the thing that I want to point out that I think is absolutely beautiful, right, is going through your wreckage of your past.
Right.
And then one day a beautiful thing happens when a shift happens, like you talked about happened for you in prison, where you're like, I need a different lifestyle. Like this lifestyle no longer serves me. I'm tired of being sick and tired. You make the transition. And then for a long time, speaking from my experience, I still was like covering up that. Like I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to visit it. I didn't want people to know that I struggled with substance use disorder. And then one day it's like my weaknesses became my strengths. Mm-hmm. Because I'm sure you have this moment, right, Drew? When you're sitting across from somebody and they're going, you don't know me. I've been to prison. I've done this. I've done that. I've stole from my parents. Right. And they're basically building a defense as to why you could never relate to things that they'd gone through, to be able to look at them and go, really? Let me tell you a little bit about what I've gone through. Right.
Why don't you Google my name?
and then it's like this window of opportunity opens up where all of a sudden now there's relatability. A relationship starts to foster. And you're right, that's a talent. And I think it's amazing how we can go from the darkness of our past to using that as a tool to inspire others and to bring out the light in others. I'll tell you, one of the hardest things to do is what Drew does. Going to somebody who has no hope, is at the bottom of the, at their rock bottom, and trying to, I like the word you used, interject, right? Or basically to get them to commit to, hey, there is a better way. There's a better life. But trying to do that, man, it takes a very passionate person. It takes somebody that has a lot of personal skills. So that's cool, man. I love that.
I think importantly too, it takes someone that's willing to accept that you might not be successful, to be okay and to set your ego aside and not take it personally when you give your heart and everything you have to get this person to to buy in, and they don't accept that help. It took me a long time to not feel like a failure after that.
Well, the thing is, we're capable of doing that to ourselves, right? We're wise enough to know that when somebody succeeds, it wasn't because of me.
Yeah.
Like when I succeed, maybe it's because of me, but if somebody else succeeds, that wasn't because of me. But when they fail, that was because of me, right?
And we personalize it.
Yeah, we're so hard on ourselves. We won't take credit for if somebody does
But we'll
good.
take the blame.
But man, if they don't do well, it's all on us.
Yeah.
And that just shows you how the sort of addict mind works. And it's not just addicts that feel that way sometimes, but I'm saying we definitely are capable of doing that. Like if you're going to be humble enough to say, listen, if that guy succeeded, it wasn't because of me, it was because of the work he or she did, then we can't also take the blame.
Yeah.
So that's hard to see.
You can't
sometimes,
get
but
somebody to surrender, right? You can show them the path, but you can't get them to surrender, give up control, admit that they have a problem, right? All the steps that we talk about, all the keys to recovery, you can't do that for them. They have to do that on their own.
What's interesting is, all this terrible stuff that I put myself through, going to prison, losing the connection with my daughter, divorce, losing homes, jobs, all that stuff, was never enough. But then what ended up, kind of flipping that switch in my head was I was in the prison and I got in trouble within the prison. They put some sanctions on me. They took my personal TV away. So I wasn't going to be able to watch the San Francisco Giants play in the World Series.
Oh, yeah.
And for whatever reason, that was enough. And not that that's more important than my daughter or anything else. It was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Hey, listen, there is a straw, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you, so you know who Eric Clapton is? Clapton's in recovery.
Yeah.
Right? And he wrote a book, and you remember he wrote the song Tears in Heaven where his kid fell out of a second-story window and died.
Right.
That's not what got him clean. He wrote when he wrote his autobiography, he was walking down a trail going fishing one day, and he was high, and he tripped and broke his fishing rod.
Yeah.
And his kid falling out of a second-story window wasn't enough to get him clean, but he broke his fishing rod, and that's the day he started getting clean.
And
It takes what it takes.
Yeah, and I would argue that all of those sitting in your conscience mind are heavy. Yeah. And so a lot of times it is the fly that breaks the camel's back, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times it is those little things that you're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, I love it.
Finally got tired of me being who I was, getting in the way of me being who I wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man. That's cool.
Okay, so we're still freewheeling a little bit.
I like it.
All right, good. I do too. But take us back to how'd you get started using drugs or alcohol?
So, I grew up in a really just normal kind of middle class family in Northern California. No real problems or trauma I can think of growing up.
Shout out to your hometown.
Cottonwood, California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
About 1,500 people.
Yes.
Maybe 2,000. I don't know. So we, had a good upbringing. Parents stayed married, good siblings, good friends. Never drank or did drugs during high school. Was a good kid. Other than just like ditching school and, stupid stuff like that. But
Other than all the other bad behaviors.
yeah, just
other than that.
stealing, stuff like that. No. And it was in my 20s. So I got married when I was 21. Obviously didn't work out because I'm getting married here in 2 weeks. But I got married when I was 21. My daughter was born when I was about 24. And, one thing that I discovered through my therapy, and then my parents were able to discover, and this isn't something that I use to blame my parents, it's just something that we've realized, and that they couldn't know at the time, but basically, this is first world problems, but basically they loved me too much, in that they didn't want me to experience pain, disappointment, stress, and they tried to protect me from that stuff, and they put things in place where I wouldn't have to really experience those things, or as little as possible. So by the time I was an adult, I had no coping skills, If you're not experiencing those things growing up, then you don't have time to develop these coping skills. And so I found myself as a new husband, a new father, and, I suffered from depression and anxiety, and I had zero coping skills. Started getting some pretty bad stress headaches, I guess that's what they were. I never actually got an actual diagnosis. They were just excruciating.
You were having headaches.
Yeah, and they
terrible
were 24/7,
Sure.
And I went to an Instacare one day, and I just said, "Hey, this is what's going on." And he said, "Okay, here's 50 Vicodin." And
50.
yeah,
That'll cure any headache.
Yeah. He's
take
like,
them all at once.
He's like, just narcotics is the best thing for this kind of pain. I was like, okay, didn't really know any better.
Right.
I'd had them before, just wisdom teeth, wrist surgery, but all I remembered is that they made me tired. But turns out this time, not only did it solve my physical pain, but it really helped with a lot of the emotional stuff was going on. I felt less depressed and anxious. I felt like a better father, better husband, and bam, I thought I found my solution, and kind of wondered, why isn't everyone doing this?
That was the lie
Yeah.
that your brain told that you believed.
Exactly.
Yes.
My brain lied to me, and I believed it.
But it felt that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is, it does feel that way,
Yeah.
right? I see people all the time that support people, not the person who suffers from substance abuse themselves, but support people saying, "Oh, these drug addicts they're just terrible people, and they're making terrible choices." And the truth is, seeking relief from a terrible headache is not a bad choice, right? This is how a lot of people start. A lot of people start with an injury or an illness, or you go into the doc, you broke your leg, or you tore your ACL playing football, or whatever it is, and the doc gives you some pain pills. That's how it starts for a bunch of people.
Guilty.
That's not a bunch of bad moral people right there. Those are people going in trying to get help for their torn ligaments or their migraine headaches or their whatever they have. And that's a lot of people.
And if people thought that way, I would challenge their thinking. When I do the family groups, I think relatability is huge. And so I always say all of us in today's society are addicted to sugar. And I get that it's not the same thing. However, I did read a statistic the other day that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. I'm going to say it again. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So anyways, I always like to throw that out there.
Sprinkling cocaine in your coffee.
I wouldn't recommend that, but everybody can
I've
relate.
read those studies.
You can relate.
By the way, I argue with that point.
Okay.
I've read those studies.
Ooh, sounds like a future podcast coming up.
Yeah, let's do that. Sugar versus cocaine.
All right.
Okay, so anyway. So there you go.
Yeah, so,
That gives we got about a minute left. So
yeah, it, obviously blossomed from there, into something much more. I quickly refilled that prescription, and you can kind of guess, the snowball effect. It's a common tale. And, as you know, how addiction affects the brain, and it affects your ability to make good choices. And, I started making very poor choices, and my personality started to change. I started to engage in criminal activity, like burglary and stealing from friends and family. So
yeah. Let's take a break there. We'll come back and kind of finish this part of it. But
I'm excited to finish it, because I want to argue with the whole decision thing, because once your brain's addicted, it's no longer really a decision, right?
Yeah,
It's
no
the
question.
it's the powerlessness that we talk about. So I'm excited to get back to that. And guess what? I think we have a board certified addictionologist here that we can maybe talk a little bit about that too.
Ooh.
But then we want to get to your life in recovery today. So join us for that good stuff in part 2 of episode 40. It's been fun. You'll hear from us again after this 30-second sponsorship mention. Guys, I'm rough today.
Wow.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller, sponsored by Steps Recovery Center and the Hilton Garden Inn.
I'm Desmond Lomax, one of the clinical executives here at Steps Recovery, and once you become of the Steps family, you're just a part of the Steps family. A lot of us have overcome substances, overcome addiction, and now we're able to help other people. Second of all, we're also going to help you in a way where you can afford to be helped. Third of all, we're going to give you the same quality that many organizations are charging 2 to 3 times, and it's more about you than it is about our organization.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
All right, welcome back. Episode 40. We got Drew Wilson in the house. Before we get back to his story, episode 40, part 2 is brought to you by the Hilton Garden Inn in St. George, Utah. If you're traveling through southern Utah, give them a Google search.
Look, I'm Vanna White.
Boom. Just type in Hilton Garden Inn, St. George, Utah. They have amazing amenities, the best hospitality in all of southern Utah by far.
Well.
All right, let's jump right back into it.
We're just talking over you. Don't worry about us.
Oh, it's totally fine.
We do love the Hilton Garden Inn, though.
Embrace the chaos. That's my new.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. That'd be good for you.
I've made it this far.
All right, so we were. There's a couple things I wanted to speak to on where he was
because
going
I hate
with
when
his
people
doctor.
say that. Like, I hate when people say, like, sure, it may be a choice up front, okay, but after your brain becomes addicted, and Dr. Sellers can go into this because it's his field, but it no longer becomes like a choice. Cue Dr. Sellers.
Well, one of the things I wanted to point out wasn't quite related to that, but there are studies in the literature. There's one particularly well done study. It was released by the CDC, which I know everybody trusts and loves these days, but we used to love and trust them. And I think the CDC is doing the best job they know how, although they're a political body a little bit. But anyway, the CDC every week releases a report called the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, MMWR. And there was a study in the MMWR about 5 years ago that showed the following. If a person goes to a doctor, and they got this through looking at 6 million medical records. If a person goes to a doctor and receives a prescription for an opiate that is equivalent to 1 day's worth of opiates. So let's say you go and you break your finger and the doc gives you 3 Lortabs or 3 Vicodins or whatever.
Or like the dentist. That's a common one.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the dentist sends you home with a couple of somethings. Okay. 1 day. 5% of those people were on the same opiate a year later, the exact same opiate.
5%.
5%. You have a 5%, and I will tell you, if you've been on the same opiate for a year,
you're addicted.
You're addicted, right? So 5% of people with 1 day's supply become addicted. If it's a 10-day supply, if it's a 5-day supply, you have a 10% chance of still being on that same opiate at the year mark. If it's a 10-day supply, it's a 20% chance. And if the doctor gives you a 28-day supply of pain medication, there is a 50% chance that you are still on that pain medication at the 1 year mark. If your first prescription is 28 days. Guy gave you 50 Vicodin.
50.
I'm telling you that's at least 5 days worth. I mean, at least 10 days worth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me not.
And it ended up being about 1 day's worth later.
It's 3 days, but it starts out being at least 10 days worth. And so the evolution of this whole thing has been, there was a time about 25, 35 years ago, somewhere in that range, and I'm not sure when, but probably that whole time, where the powers that be were pushing pain as the 5th vital sign. So there's blood pressure, heart rate, respiration rate, oxygen saturation. There's a bunch of different things that they call vital signs, but basically it's pulse, heart rate and blood pressure and temperature and respirations. The fifth vital sign, they were pushing us pain. So we're supposed to ask every patient about pain. And with that push came the push to relieve pain. Mm-hmm. We were pushed as physicians to give more and more pain medicine to make sure we were actively trying to treat pain.
And patting pockets.
And when that, well, I don't know, it didn't, maybe. I don't think individual physicians quite saw it that way, but I'll bet drug companies did. But anyway, so with that push, we were starting to give out more and more pain medicines. Your doctor probably that gave you that 50 Vicodin for a headache and to treat subsequent headaches, but whatever, probably was a victim of that push to alleviate pain. But he probably didn't know that if he gives you 50 Vicodin, you got a 25-35% chance of being on that same pain medicine at the 1 year mark. 25% chance of converting you to someone who's addicted to that. So again, we look at sometimes people with substance use disorders as scum of the earth or people that are making bad choices, when in fact this all developed over time, and kind of we got there not by being bad moral people. We got there a lot of times as victims of this push to make pain the fifth vital sign, this push from doctors to alleviate pain. And doctors, most of them for the most part, thought they were doing the right thing. I mean, there's a few bad actors. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Guy that you see initially that gives you 270 Percocet, that's a bad actor. But for the most part, they think they're doing the right thing, trying to alleviate your pain. Yeah. So I think that's interesting.
I think I've found it important. Well, that's definitely true. Like I have a hard time like completely letting myself off the hook, you know? I mean, I think
you gotta take some accountability, right?
There's still some accountability there, you know.
No question.
That initial prescription, you know, getting physically addicted, you know, maybe not completely my fault, but the behaviors that started before that, because my addictive behaviors started long before that doctor prescribed me 50 Vicodin.
What those look like, Drew?
I was a liar, you know, like I was a liar and manipulator.
What?
Yeah. Weird.
Never heard of an addict being a liar.
Most addicts are super, you know, honest people, but
you know how you know when an addict's lying?
Their mouth's moving.
Yeah,
their lips are moving.
That's why I always tell families when I work with families, judge their actions, not their words. Right? It's kind of that. Yeah, your actions are speaking so loud, I can't hear the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of us, when we get into early recovery and get 30 days under our belt, like.
Suddenly,
why is my trust not back?
30 days? You mean 2 days?
Yeah.
As soon as we get 2 days under our belt, we assume that
the first phone call home.
Give me my kids back.
Our family's supposed to trust everything that comes out of our mouth after lying to them for 20
so
years.
offended when they don't,
sure.
you know.
For sure. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was hard.
Yeah. It takes
like I'm
really
finally
years.
not lying and you don't believe me?
One of my favorite, you know, metaphors or analogies or whatever is, you know, I hiked 50 miles into the woods. I have to hike 50 miles back out. Yeah. You know, like it takes what it takes.
And one thing that I often share is I trained them to think this way. Mm-hmm. So I have the keys to train them to trust me again. Right?
Right.
So again, like, you know, mom calls Jared, where you at? I'm at the gym. Are you really at the gym though? Well, yeah, of course, you never believe, right? But if I understand, I'm the one that taught her to think that way. Right. That same phone call goes like this. Jared, you at the gym? Yeah, I'm at the gym. How can I prove it to you? Do you want me to send you a pin drop? Do you want me to take a picture? How can I get you to trust me again?
Yeah.
Right.
So
way different.
So trust is earned, right?
Absolutely.
And the only way to earn it is to be trustworthy, but you have to be trustworthy for a very long time because you weren't trustworthy for a very long time.
Back to the analogy.
Consistent action over time equals trust, right?
Back to the analogy of 50 days into the woods, 50 days out of the woods.
Miles.
Oh, yeah.
Either way.
Meters? Miles?
Minutes?
Kilo? Oh, okay.
You know, I think one clue for my family is if they try and call me on something where maybe they don't think I'm being completely trustworthy and I get super upset and defensive,
yes,
they're probably spot on.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. If I
the
stay
guy
calm,
trying to build trust does not become offended when their family asks them. That's just an opportunity to build trust. Yeah. Send them a picture.
Yeah. So talk to me about early recovery, because that's something I really want to talk about this, because I feel like I really want this podcast to inspire people that are in early recovery to maintain long-term recovery, because we know statistically they have a much better chance the longer that they stay clean and they start to rebuild their lives. What did early recovery look like for you, Drew, when you were working out those relationships with your family? What did your employment look like? Like, tell us about the grind, man.
So early recovery for me was prison, and I've heard some people say, before, like, oh, that time doesn't count, blah blah blah. But
You can get drugs in prison.
yeah, I've got a bone to pick with that because getting better, right? Early recovery, long-term recovery, all of it is all about changing behaviors.
Thank you.
And there's no harder place to change your behaviors than prison. Because you are just surrounded by people that want you to fail,
Want to drag you down.
At least in treatment and outside world, you can kind of find like-minded people and form, kind of an alliance. But it's hard in prison. When I finally started making changes, I started reading good books, I started taking classes, I started doing all this stuff to better myself. I was made fun of.
It's a lonely road.
I wasn't in the section playing pinochle and working out all the time, and they all thought, well, you're doing too much. What are you doing? And it's crabs in a barrel. They want to drag you down because if you're doing good things, then they feel bad about themselves. And so I did use drugs my whole first year.
In prison.
Yeah, I was. I mean, not every day, but I was getting them pretty regularly. And then I had that moment where I couldn't watch the Giants, and the straw broke, and I went to work. And, I read that book, Man's Search for Meaning, where, the guy's in a concentration camp in World War II, and, he's getting singled out every day. His family's probably dead. He's getting beaten. He's getting starved. He's breaking rocks, manual labor every day. But this guy still chooses his attitude every day, decides I'm going to get something out of this. If I'm going through this, it's going to be for something. And if I make it out of this, I'm going to make a difference in the world, and so I kind of adopted that attitude, and obviously I wasn't in a concentration camp, but prison's not fun either.
Well, no, right. I mean, it's as
Sure,
close
felt
as we
like it
have now.
sometimes.
So I decided to just start choosing my attitude every day, and just deciding how every day was going to go, and set an intention every day, and this is what I'm going to accomplish, and and sought out to change my behaviors.
Yeah.
How can I stop being a liar? How can I stop being a manipulator and gain integrity? And what I learned was it takes practice, just like learning to play golf. You start with the basics. And the moment that always comes back to my head was when I was in the yard at the prison, and I had a candy wrapper, and I was by myself. I was going to throw it on the ground. And the thought came to me, the definition of integrity we've all heard. If other people were around, would I do this? And the answer was no. So why am I going to do it when I'm by myself? Yeah. And I realized in that moment, like, this is a practicing moment. It's a simple thing that I can practice right now, and I can just keep practicing these little things and building up my skills, and getting better and better and better, just like golf or playing the piano. And you know what? No matter how much we practice golf, some days we still just suck.
Well, there's no question.
Yeah. So some days I still suck at honesty and integrity, but you still get back on the golf course, right?
You go back and do it again.
So,
Absolutely.
Correct your mistakes.
So, just the next day, and like, I forgive myself. I just do better the next day,
I think this part right here might be, we still have a fair amount of time, but this part right here might be the critical message for those that are listening is early recovery. You have to not take drugs, but early recovery is less about not taking drugs and more about changing your behaviors.
Oh, I'm so glad you said
Yeah,
that.
I think that's really the key, because a lot of people sit on their hands and they don't take any drugs, and I'm in early recovery. Well, if you're still lying, cheating, stealing, manipulating, not really. That's not recovery. It might be sobriety, but it ain't recovery.
I love when I get a phone call from a family member and they say, hey, our loved one says that you guys are emotionally abusive. And I'm like, so I call the clinical team in the area and say, hey, what's going on? Just let you know, this is what's being reported. Oh, we had a process group.
And they were held accountable.
Right? But to them, and again, it goes back to that manipulation and that dishonesty. Their brain screaming at them, what can I, and they're mulling over it. How can I get myself out of this? What excuse can I come up with that's good enough to get me to where I can go back to having life the way that I wanted it to be? And so it's just, it's not necessarily about, they have been through detox. They are actively in treatment. So they're not impaired. It's not about the drugs. It's about that manipulative, that lying behavior. Right. And so I just, it's crazy. That's spot on.
Being uncomfortable, there's a cure for being uncomfortable.
Right.
That works every time, and it's called dopamine. Dopamine works every time, right? And we've talked about this a bunch on this podcast, but to an addict, they know how to get dopamine really quickly. Like they can get massive amounts of dopamine in 5 minutes time, and that helps them feel way more comfortable. And so when they get uncomfortable with being held accountable, their brain turns to, hey, how do I get out of this?
Got to use.
Right. And got to use also in treatment turns to got to leave.
Got to leave. Oh, that's before got to use.
Because you can't really use
or rehab romance.
Or rehab romance, which releases dopamine.
Yeah.
Which Drew was great at. He shared that with us.
Right.
No, I wasn't great at it.
Well,
Good point.
I attempted.
Points. So Drew, talk to me about once the gates opened up and you walked out of prison, man. What did life look like? You transitioned. You went into sober living with steps.
You know, I was really prepared. Everything seemed to go pretty smoothly, you know, and honestly, like I had a lot of support, you know, and a lot of those guys don't, you know, so I've been able to stay out of prison and be successful. I have had a lot of support, you know, so I can attribute some of, you know, my success to just my support system. And unfortunately, some guys just don't have that. And it's easier for them to get swept up in that cycle and stay in it. But I did prepare really well. You know, I had an outline of what I was going to do day one, week 1, month 1, year 1, and I was going to stick to it, you know. And while other guys were talking about who they were going to, you know, hook up with, what restaurants they were going to go to, you know, I was thinking outside that first 2 weeks honeymoon period, you know, because, and it's the same thing with treatment, jail, whatever, you know, like you got to think outside that pink cloud, that 2-week honeymoon period where, you know, eventually I knew that real life was going to set it again. That first couple weeks was going to be great. I was going to be experiencing these things for the first time in 3.5 years, you know, and it was going to be so fun. But eventually, you know, I'm going to feel stressed again. I'm going to feel heartbreak again. I'm going to feel disappointment. And I had to have a plan in place for when that happened, you know, and I had to be prepared. And so I had that plan of what I was going to do, and I stuck to it, you know, and I quickly gained the support system, you know, like Julie Jackson and, you know, some of these really strong people in recovery. I stuck with the winners.
But again, you wouldn't have had those you wouldn't have had those relationships if you hadn't have gone there in the first place, right? Because that's where you met Julie, and that's where, was...
Yeah, so I didn't know Julie back then. Julie wasn't involved with Steps when I went there in 2011.
But you knew of Steps.
Yeah.
So that's how you were able to kind of find your footing.
Reached out, or I think my mom reached out to the former owner, Mike Jorgensen, and that's how we got back involved with Steps. But so I met Julie my first day out of prison.
Got you.
So, you know, I was...
Can I challenge one thought real fast? You said... I had the support and a lot of people don't. And I want to challenge that because there's so many programs out there. There's so many opportunities out there that even if you don't have the family support, even if you don't know the community resources and the community support, it's your responsibility to get involved and seek them out. Voc Rehab. Voc Rehab will pay for you to get a new career.
Yeah.
And what other... So sometimes I hear what you're saying, like you had a lot of really close family support that really helped out, but there is support out there for people that do not have that.
No doubt, you know, and if you want it bad enough, you know,
yes.
you can get better. So, you know, I wasn't trying to give them an out, you know, like if you want to get better and have a better life bad enough, then you'll find those resources. They're
workforce services.
Yeah.
There's tons of them.
Mine were just a little more easily accessible, but they're there.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, like I said, I had prepared really well. not to say that everything, was always smooth sailing. Like I was saying, like I had a few days I've been out of prison about 5 years. I've had a few days of my integrity wasn't great. My honesty wasn't great, and I've had the roller coaster of kind of going in and outside of my integrity, and
You haven't been perfect?
no, yeah,
You didn't get the manual on how to do this thing perfectly? Flawless?
no, I'd love to see that.
Dr. Sellers wrote it, didn't you?
I am it.
But I just continuously try to get better and hone my skills, and just be a better person.
Which is why we are encouraged to take a moral inventory on a daily basis.
Step 4 and 10.
Because everyone screws up.
Yep.
There's no one out there that doesn't step away from their integrity once in a while. No, sometimes they don't step way away from it, but no one's ever on that straight and narrow line that never wavers. Almost nobody is on that, right? We kind of wander around it and we try to stay close to it, but if we take a searching and fearless moral inventory every day, then we can steer ourselves back to it. And maybe we overshoot, and then we steer back, and then we'll eventually hit where we're going.
Yeah, and I love that Drew talked about those were kind of warning signs for him, right? Like when he finds himself not in integrity or not being honest, like manipulating, those are all warning signs for Drew that, hey, we know where this road leads to. Right. You sure you want to keep, it's like when you're driving down the road in your truck or car and that check engine light keeps flashing on. I know I can either pay attention to that and get it checked out, or I'm going to have ruptured.
Or drive until it breaks down.
right.
It'll break down.
Yeah. And things, the more I worked on myself and just kept trying to get better, my life just improved. And, I got out of prison. I got a sponsor. I started attending AA. I got involved in that fellowship. I got involved in sober softball, and I built connection. And I have just this amazing support network in the state of Utah. I'm from California, but the bulk of my support is here now. Some amazing things have happened for me. I've got this great career that it still blows my mind. Like I just always assumed I was just gonna be that guy that made like $12 an hour, or just working at the grocery store, which is fine.
Just not what you were aspiring to be. It's okay.
Yeah.
Not putting anybody down.
No,
It's just not
no,
wasn't your aspiration.
Got this great career. I've got this great support group. My daughter's back in my life today. I get married in 2 weeks, and she's one of the bridesmaids.
How old's your daughter?
She's 12.
And what's her name?
Her name is Hannah.
Hannah.
Yeah.
Give a shout out to Hannah. I hope she hears this.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Hannah, your dad is amazing. What a stud. Sitting here with us today.
Yeah. So she's going to be at the wedding, and she'll be a bridesmaid, and that's a miracle to me. A miracle. It really was like I had to hike 50 miles back out of the woods to gain the trust back from her mom, and that's understandable. I was very patient, and I worked hard, and I drive up to Boise still, often, because that's where my daughter lives, and I go see her, and I stay consistent, and I understood going in that that's what it was going to take. I can't expect to get 5 years of recovery in 1 year. I can't get 1 year in 30 days. Right. It takes what it taktakes. And
life's just so much sweeter on this side.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're driving here this morning, and I'm like, Drew, do you even believe that we get to do this today? Like, he's buying a house, I'm buying a house, he's getting married. Like, it's just mind-blowing. Yeah. It's just mind-blowing. Tonight we get to go out with Dr. Sellers to a restaurant to eat.
Yeah.
Like, we get to, can you believe we get to do this today?
I think that's a really important part of this whole thing, is to not lose that gratitude and that sense of awe, because I'll still be sitting there. I've got 7+ years of recovery, and I'll still be sitting there with my entire family at an family event, and my mind's just blown that I'm even there, and I'm allowed to be there, and they trust me. And I think you got to keep that sense of awe and gratitude.
Yeah.
Hey, we've only got 2 minutes left, but I want to point something out, which I should have pointed out a long time ago. That stuff shows up on the podcast, so don't bang your hands.
But back to gratitude. Back to gratitude. I love that you pointed out, like, it's cool when other people see value in you, right? When other people can, like, yeah, not to get all emotional and stuff, but I don't think people like Dr. Sellers and the people I work for, that you work for, like, I don't know that they truly appreciate, like, how much they've changed our lives. Like, they've given us an opportunity to do something pretty stinking amazing. And, like, my heart is so full of gratitude, you know?
Yeah, I'm so loyal to these guys at Steps, Paul Walkenhorst and Ty Hansen and Julie, because they literally have given me everything, and a lot of what maybe not everything. I've worked hard, but
I was going to say, but if you ask them, they would say you earned everything.
Right.
Because some of them are working the same program you are.
Yeah.
Many of them.
Yeah.
So there's, but I'm very blessed to have landed, at my home, my career very early on in my recovery, and have that family that I do.
Thanks, buddy. Listen, we appreciate you coming down. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Even though you forgot the ice machine for the place that I work at.
Yeah. Well, I know who's going to whine, and I'll handle it.
I'm just teasing, man. Thank you, Doc Sellers, for being down here for another week. We look forward to next week.
What a great podcast.
Yeah, it's been a good time.
Thanks, Drew, for coming down. That's cool. We
Sean
appreciate
Denovan,
it.
thank you. This podcast is all about gratitude.
Yeah, we love everybody today, don't we?
Yeah.
And thank you to our listeners. Like, seriously, if you like this, share this, comment, right? Like, get involved. The more people that this reaches, the better off. Thank you guys again. This has been episode 40. We look forward to next week for episode 41.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. This has been a production from a podcast studio.